Check, 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 check. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Hot Topic Celeb TV. I'm your host, D. Teflon on the MIC. And tonight, of course, it is Unscripted After Dark. Joining us tonight, special guest, fitness and fashion influencer and the founder of GuidedByDivine.com. The beautiful Miss Carla Maria will be joining us in the building. Don't forget, of course, you can check us out each and every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for Unscripted After Dark. And don't forget, of course, each and every Sunday, 6 p.m. Hollywood in Conversation. We'll be in conversation with some of the biggest stars in film, television, and music each and every Sunday night. Don't forget, of course, you can check us out on iHeartRadio and, of course, as well, follow us on YouTube. Also, as well, check us out on Facebook. Don't forget tonight, if you want to ask Carla a question personally and direct, you got to do two things. You have to be making sure you are following this account, Hot Topic Celeb TV. Also, make sure as well you go right now and follow my personal account, which is at DTEFLON. Make sure you're doing both so I can see your question. Make sure you guys drop your question below. Let us know as well what city you're from, and we will see you in a minute. We're about to let Miss Carla into the building. 1, 2. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for another edition of Unscripted After Dark. I am your host, D. Teflon on the MIC. Joining me tonight in the place to be, the beautiful, the sexy, the talented, the gorgeous, the one and the only, Miss Carla Marie in the building. I want to thank you guys for joining in. Make sure you guys let us know in the comments where you guys are watching from tonight. And tonight we're going to join us for a special evening. So sit back for the next hour and join us for an in-depth conversation. Welcome, Miss Carla Maria, to the building.
Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. How are you today doing? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Guys, let us know that you guys can hear us well. If you guys can hear us in your live there, please throw a thumbs up in the comments before we get started. Just make sure you guys throw a big thumbs up in the comments that you guys can hear us both. Carla, say something right now so make sure the guests can hear you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Guys, if you can hear Carla, please throw a thumbs up in the comments. Wait till some people hop on here.
Yeah, no problem.
So how have you been, pretty lady? It's been a minute.
I've been good.
Besides lying on the beach, besides every day on the beach.
Oh, I wish it was every day, right? Whenever I can fit in some time, I always sneak it in.
Guys, tonight, don't forget, of course, you are joining us for another edition of Unscripted After Dark. If you want to ask Carla a question towards the end of this show, make sure you are following this account, Hot Topic Celeb TV. Also, as well, make sure you're following DTEFLON. You need to send an invite request so you can ask Carla a question directly, live, and indirect. So before we get started here, I want to make sure that you guys can hear us live and direct correctly. So please just throw a thumbs up in the comments. Let us know where you guys are watching from tonight. How has your week been so far?
Good, a busy week. But that's always, a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing.
It's always a good thing. Listen, man, to stay busy in this time of climate is definitely a very, very good thing. Okay, yeah. guys, welcome tonight for another edition of Hot Topic Celeb TV. I'm your host, D. Teflon. Tonight, joining us, the beautiful Miss Carla Maria. So, Miss Carla, before we get started into this, I want you to tell everybody your name, where you're from, and then we'll start from there.
Okay, my name's Carla Maria Cadotte, and I am from Orange County, California. I live close to a lot of the beaches out here, Laguna, Dana Point.
So, Carla, we go back a minute, and I want to take the callers and stuff like that, and the viewers that are on here tonight, back to the beginning of your journey. So first, we're gonna start. Obviously, for those that don't know, this lady has been a trailblazer for the Asian fitness model community in the sense of the industry for probably going back as far as the MySpace days. You guys are old enough to remember that. She has been killing the game since probably about 2004. So I want to know, how did you get started in this fitness model journey for yourself?
Okay, well, obviously I started modeling when I was much younger, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really get into fitness until I was in my 20s. So I started modeling when I was in my teens already, but
Okay.
around my mid 20s or so, when I was in college, that's when I made that transition over to fitness. I
So.
started working out in like a big bodybuilding gym with a
Mm-hmm.
great trainer. And I was around a lot of, the greats that had been Olympia competitors. They would shoot a lot of the fitness magazines there, and I was kind of introduced to, that side of the industry through there.
So how did you break into the modeling industry itself? Like, how was that process for you? Obviously, in the sense, like we don't see other than like, you know, back in the day, Kiana's flex appeal, but in regards to just the modeling industry, it's obviously been, a hard barrier for a lot of Asians per se to break into that crossover and actually become as successful as you have. So how did you break into the industry itself, into modeling?
Well, it was kind of a transition. Like I'd started modeling first in just more so the import modeling scene, the Asian modeling scene, like car magazines, everything else, catalog work, more advertisement type work back when I lived in still the San Francisco Bay Area. So I was
Okay.
actually approached by people, that wanted to represent me and everything else. And that's kind of how, that took off for me. So it was something I'd always wanted to do, but
Hmm.
I guess something that kind of found me, if that makes sense.
So was the modeling your like always your passion, or was it something that just sort of fell into your lap?
It was something that I'd always wanted to do since I was young. And
Hmm.
then it just kind of transpired that it did start to fall into my lap, just from, being kind of out and about, doing my thing, getting into the import modeling scene, and just literally getting kind of, kind of in a sense like scouted by people that are looking for, models or people for a certain type of look for catalog work or whatever it may be. And from there kind of branched from there.
Did you find for yourself, like when you started, any challenges per se, like obviously breaking into something new and developing a reputation and a name? Like, what did you find any roadblocks for yourself when you started?
Not too many. I was fortunate in that I didn't, because I kind of fit into a certain niche. Obviously I'm very short, I'm only
Hmm.
like 5'1". So I was never going to be some high fashion type of model that wasn't
Hmm.
going to kind of be the direction that I was going to go in anyways.
Hmm.
But I did have kind of a very unique exotic type of look. So things like Hawaiian tropics and the import scene were a very good fit for me, especially kind of I've always been kind of a slimmer build, but especially I guess in comparison to other Asian women, I've always been kind of a more on the curvy end in
Hmm.
certain sense, right? So that also kind of gave me, an advantage, I guess you could say, going into it all.
So what did you, I mean, for you, like obviously, starting off in that import scene and then transitioning obviously into more of the mainstream and then eventually into fitness, what did you find for yourself, the from then to now, the differences in modeling back then to how the
Mhm.
industry is now?
Well, things were very different back then, in the sense that, we didn't have a ton of social media. Things like MySpace came out when I was already modeling. So everything was very much print magazines. That was
Hmm.
kind of how you got your work. That was the way things were. People wanted to see tear sheets. Like, what have you been in? Have you been in a catalog? Have you been in a magazine? And back then, tear sheets, I would say, were like king, right?
Hmm.
They wanted to see that what did you not only look like in, okay, photographs that can be submitted by your agent or your manager, but, what was the work that you had been in? And so that was
Hmm.
kind of like the gold, right? Like getting into magazines was the big way that I would get more and more work because,
Hmm.
we didn't have things like Instagram and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So back then, it wasn't like you could just throw up a bunch of pictures online and say, hey, I'm a model. It was like, okay, your rate or whatever you might be offered would depend kind of on obviously from the import scene, you had a following, you had people that already knew of you and liked you, or if you had been published in other work before.
Hmm.
And oftentimes then obviously other photographers or editors from those same from different magazines or ones connected within that industry would then book you. So that's how it was very different back in those days, I'd say, than
Hmm.
now. Hmm.
But did you ever find yourself, because as I said, obviously, like for me, I mean, I love that you were able to break through and be able to be that sort of trailblazer. But did you ever find yourself in an industry, you know, and I mean, the import caters more obviously towards the Asian market, but did you ever find when you wanted to maybe step out and do other opportunities, did you ever deal with any racism aspect of the industry?
Fortunately, I did not
Okay.
personally, not within the industry, right? Not saying that within other aspects of life,
Mm-hmm.
but within the industry, a lot of people actually that would contact me or that would look for me specifically wanted that type of look, wanted something that was different, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, right? In fitness, I think that I was fortunate to kind of go in at a time to where they were kind of branching away from just what had been the norm for so
Mm-hmm.
long. And I do know that for a lot of other women that were even several years before me, that would have been a barrier. But at the time that I was coming in, it was not as much at that point. So I was very fortunate with that.
So I mean, for you, like, what advice would you give in how you started, for say, for example, another Asian model who is trying to cross over and break into the industry? What would be your advice for them?
I think my honest advice to people, and here's the thing, I think it's great maybe to shoot for trade with certain photographers that you're close with that have amazing work or that maybe are published and that are able to, work out a deal with you to where those photographs can be purchased by a magazine and you get paid that way. But I think that the big mistake that I feel I see a lot of people doing is that they do all this free work, right? And that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of changed things in modeling, which is why I do a lot less myself now. Like you see a lot of people that just want to have pictures to put on their Instagram and go, oh, I'm a model, and then
Mm-hmm.
whatever else, right? Or maybe then they will shoot for certain things for free all the time, whatever it may be, without something in exchange, like, whether that be a sponsorship contract, whether that be, a paycheck, whatever that may be. And that's also kind of changed things because, if you start that way, it's just like, what they say about like, and one thing for myself that I was always strict about is like, okay, yes, there are the people who will sleep with people to get a part,
Mm-hmm.
a role, or a certain thing. Well, once you do that, whether it's shooting for free, whether it's, bartering in that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? It will be very difficult to then say, hey, like, oh, this is what my rate is in order to do
Mm-hmm.
this is what I require, right? Because if you've already kind of given something for free or you've done it in that way, why then would somebody else, right, want to honor that? But then it also makes it then more difficult for other people that are,
Mm-hmm.
say, in it or already in it, because then it goes, oh, well, I could find somebody else who will do it this way, right? And so that would be my biggest thing is to like understand and to know your value. If it's something that you actually are planning to do because you want to make money in it, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
anything else, right? Even when I started my business with intuitive healing and psychic readings, right? Like I understood and knew what my worth was before I had a huge clientele of hundreds of clients, and I stood very strongly by that, right? Because if you say, hey, okay, this is all that I'm worth, or all that I'm worth is three pictures, or the exposure that I'm trying to get through that, that kind of sets the bar for you very low.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just tell people be very aware, be careful of, how you're going into something.
But what do you deal with? I mean, with the girls now that I obviously, as I said, even the girls that I deal with in meetings and like, and they'll be like, I never, I never pay for my shoots, et cetera, et cetera. I get everything for free, you know. And I always say like exactly what you said of like knowing your worth and knowing your value. And to me, I'm like, if you are, let me rephrase this. For you, like even for example, as I said, as someone that's been in the industry and knows the fact of that it is a business. It's not
Hmm.
like as you said, there's a barter system, but and
Yeah.
again, you can have that barter system where it's where that there's a collaborative effort where there's two people that are working towards the same goal to either help you get to the next level or you get to the next level. But then you've got the barter system where, as you said, I could sleep with you and whatever. And then these are the same girls that I always see that will complain and say, well, this photographer didn't give me my pictures and screwed me over. And I'm like, I always say this is the importance of why the value in treating it like a business, where if you don't pay for your property, you don't own your property. So if you are expecting, someone not to exploit you and take advantage of you when you haven't necessarily paid for the stuff that you've shot or done in the sense of your industry, until you get to a level where you have a value and you can demand and sense what your worth is. Like, what do you feel for the girls that put themselves in those positions, where they have the Harvey Weinstein type of photographers per se that want to do, sex for photos? Like, what's your thing on that? Your take on that?
I mean, my take on that is to each its own, to be honest. Like, I
Okay.
really have no judgment for how people choose to go about things.
Okay.
But don't be surprised later if there are certain barriers that you find difficult to, say, overcome as a result of those choices, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
anything else. If you're going to go into business, no matter what it may be, you need to research and you need to educate. You need to figure out a plan for yourself that focuses kind of on, that long-term goal,
Okay.
right? Does it serve that long-term goal? Like, does that look like, or is it a step that, say, other people that have succeeded in something, is that a route that they took? And if
Mm-hmm.
not, then perhaps you need to rethink it. I mean, not saying that thinking outside the box and trying new things doesn't work, but,
Mm-hmm.
to be very calculated and to just be kind of use your best judgment in regards to what it is that you're choosing to do, right?
So what I mean for you, did you ever, in your years of experience, ever come across per se, the dark side, as we talk about, of the industry, where either been put in a compromising position or had to face an awkward situation with the photographer or even anybody that you work with in that business?
Absolutely. I think everybody who has been in it, long enough has been
So for
in
you, like,
some.
what was your experience, your dark side?
Um, well, I remember, you know, I had gone to, and I won't give too many specifics about where it
Okay.
was, et cetera. I don't want to give it away, but I was flown out of the country, so it
Okay.
was a little bit more vulnerable to, a shoot at a private island, and it was with a photographer, somebody that I'd worked with before that shoots, in very big magazines like internationally, like like Playboy, Penthouse, Maxim,
Okay.
FHM, all those types of things, right? And so obviously, I have a personal relationship, everything, and I just really didn't, you know, you you've known someone for years, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm very honest, it was like supposed to be like a Playboy style shoot, right? So they
Okay.
shoot Playboy style nudes, etc. Like I said, I've worked with this team many, many times before
Mm-hmm.
for many publications. I never, right? Like, so there's an established relationship, and just long story short, when I arrived, and that, like I said, no judgment of anybody, whatever. There were a lot of girls from, like, say, Penthouse, Playboy, and even porn stars, right, within
Mm-hmm.
that industry that were there to shoot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing that wasn't, just close to me was that, it wasn't just about shooting. It was that many of the women came in on the understanding that they would be offered like tens of thousands of dollars to, sleep with the different people, whatever. And, it kind of was brought up on the dinner
Mm-hmm.
of the evening that I was there, right?
Okay.
And so there's like 30 of us there. And mind you, it's a very private situation. Literally, like the whole island is rented out specifically for this. And,
Okay.
I kind of addressed the photographer like, hey, that's not really what I'm here for. I'm not very comfortable with that. And it was under my understanding that, okay, that's fine. Then you can just be here to shoot, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, that's fine. Everything's going to be okay. And as the evening transpired, it was kind of a situation to where I realized it wasn't going to be an option, right, for me to
Mm-hmm.
pursue. And so, I did end up calling a friend at that time and literally asking, can you fly me, off of this island first thing in the morning? Like, book me a flight, call me a cab. Like, this is how they're going to have to access it. They won't be able to come on, but I can meet them at the gate. And I just can't stay here.
Hmm.
And so, literally at like 5 o'clock in the morning, of that next day after that dinner, I just hopped on a plane and I took off, and that was it.
So I mean, for you, like, I mean, did that situation after being through that, did that, because I mean, obviously, some people when they go through those situations, it can jade them from the industry. But did it jade you, or did it make you more just oriented to be, not be maybe being alone in that situation ever again?
It just made me like realize that no matter like say how good the relationship is with the people that you've known already or worked with, that it's just always best to go through your agent or manager. That's it.
Repeat that again so
Period.
people can hear that in the back.
To just go through your agent and manager, no matter, even if you've worked with those people before years ago, it's just, I think, in my opinion, better to do it that way, right? Because I don't have like a good girl past. I have been in all kinds of industries and I have a really crazy past. So it's not like I hadn't been exposed to certain things or put my own self in certain situations, right?
Hmm.
So I'm not trying to say I'm an angel or saint because, I'm very open about another podcast I've done and then everything about my past. But it's one thing when, you are expecting certain things and you are like, okay, this is who I am at this point in life, and it's under my terms, and it's a whole nother thing, right? If it's like you're not, you're good, you go into something and you're not expecting it to be anything like that whatsoever.
Well, I know that you had let us know in the sense when we wanted you on in regards to the trauma, and that you have gone through, as you said, in your past, and the dark aspects of sexual abuse and things of that nature. Like, how did you how did you overcome going through, and if you want to explain to the viewers and stuff like that, like some of those dark moments that you went through?
Well, I did not go through them very gracefully in the earlier parts of my life, right? Is what I
Okay.
kind of say to people. And I'm very honest about, my stories, right? Like I don't have any shame about who I've been. And I think it's important to share things because, a lot of people who are not healed and they kind of go through, say, certain paths or they might
Okay.
put themselves through certain things. So, all throughout, I'd say, you know, starting really young, obviously, this and it's been shared kind of in my submission and on other podcasts as well. Like, I went through and endured like a lot of sexual abuse throughout childhood. And so for myself personally, the way that kind of manifested and the way that it, kind of destructively formed in my life was that I chose kind of a route of hypersexuality at a very young age, right?
Okay.
I also, the way that it was handled, or should we say not handled or dealt with when it did come out, amongst the people that I trusted the most,
Hmm.
basically led to, substance abuse starting, you know, around 15 years old, continuing for about a little over a decade,
What
right?
type of substances did you dive into?
Um, Gosh, okay. So started more like prescription pills and stuff, alcohol when I was very, very young, like high school age. And then it transitioned as I, went into working in strip club industries and
Hmm.
modeling more and more into a lot of, pain meds, pain pills,
Yeah.
cocaine, ecstasy all the time, but primarily cocaine was the big, big, big one for me. That was the big substance that I struggled with the most. And that also had to do kind of with, the era that I was in and the way
Hmm.
that things were in modeling, right?
Yeah.
You would show up and you would usually do an event or something in the morning until the afternoon. And then, you'd be shooting, throughout that time as well. And then in the evening, you're hosting a club and
Hmm.
going to after parties and hosting. So you'd be up,
A whole
hours and
day.
hours and hours, the whole day. And, back in those days, and I don't know how it is anymore because I'm not really into it, that was just kind of a common part
And it's
of it.
changed now, sweetheart. It's changed. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, and that's why I tell
Like,
explain to people, like, back then, we put in the work. Like, you legitimately, like, sleep was not an option. Your health was not an option because you're an industry, as you said. It wasn't about social media where everyone thinks they're somebody. Like back then, you had to prove that you were somebody, and proving you're somebody was how much gas do you have in the tank. So you can't be like, oh well, I'm tired, I want to go home, because an opportunity that you work so hard for, or even just being in the room to connect with a certain person, sometimes you didn't get that opportunity twice. So you had to just keep fueling. I mean, I never did the drugs part, but like for me, the addiction aspect was alcohol, when I started, and that's what fueled me through. But it was exactly what you said. Like you started in, say, 9 o'clock in the morning, and you went till
Finish at like 6 a.m. and
6
then you
a.m.
wake up and then you
Do it all
you
over again.
take a power nap and you yeah, and I'm not talking about the fitness industry per se. I'm talking about, the other like
Hmm.
earlier types of modeling I did, but it was a very common thing that, you would be accommodated with drugs in your hotel room, whatever it was, whatever you needed to be
Hmm.
able, you get off the plane and you get to your hotel, you put your stuff down, you would go straight into a shoot, or you're hosting parties and events all night long. And then
Hmm.
you're waking up a few hours later. I mean, if you even get to sleep like 3 to 4 hours, and then you're going into photo shoots and you're going to an event or like, whatever it was, whether it was a show, whatever you had to do, then you'd be going straight into, the hosting for the clubs, et cetera, because that's the way that you were booked. It's like if they were flying you out for something,
Hmm.
you're expected to work all the way through. You don't really have a break other than to change your outfits and to do what's needed. And that was kind
Hmm.
of just that was just the nature of the beast
Beast.
back
Yep.
then. And it was like, okay, if you could hang with that and you could do that and you would get it done, then you could get booked. Because
Yep.
hey, this you're not gonna cry about it. You're not gonna, say, oh, I can't do this. It's whatever. Because I have had seen people break down and cry. You just do it. And whatever means that is. And for myself, like, between having worked, in strip club industries, all of those different things, already having been someone who used substances, and then, going into that, it was just kind of like, this is life. This is just
Hmm.
the way that it is, right?
So I mean, for you, like, how did you dealing with that environment, and trying to stay professional even during that? Like, how did you overcome those things to keep going, and then to not only get out of that in like environment for yourself to get clean?
Well, for myself, it took removing kind of myself from everything for a little while to do that, right? Because I even admit that there is a lot of unhealthy habits even in the fitness industry. So, some of my habits were still there even when I had already started to begin to shoot, for American Curves and, certain fitness magazines, right?
Hmm.
Because obviously, and we know that, it's not a secret, right? Anybody who says that it doesn't exist within fitness is lying, right?
Hmm.
Like, I mean, look, there's people who've died of specific types of overdoses. We already know it's
Yep.
true, right? And so, for myself personally, it took a couple of overdoses, and then one finally
Wow.
on my very own, where there was nobody around this time to help me, to save me, and literally, realizing and knowing, because I'd been through it before,
Hmm.
what was happening. And at this point, I was no longer functioning, and kind of realizing, okay, I might die, like in my bed, at my home. I lived between here in Orange County at the time I was in college, or I just graduated college, and I
Okay.
was living between Orange County and Las Vegas. And, I was just kind of on this crazy bender hiatus at the time. And, like people were concerned about me already addressing my addiction. And anybody who brought it up, it was just kind of like, the way I dealt with it was just run away. I don't deal with it, right?
Hmm.
And I remember this time saying, okay, nobody knows, even my drug doing friends have no idea where I am. Nobody knows if I'm here, if I'm in Vegas, if I'm in LA, or where I am. And I just remember thinking to myself, like as I was going through it, because it was this time I couldn't even reach for my phone to dial 911,
Wow.
right? And so I remember thinking like, okay, that's it. This is gonna be it. Like I'm going to die home alone. I haven't spoken to like family hardly in like almost, at least a year,
Mm-hmm.
because my addiction's so out of control. Even my drug friends are saying that like I use too much, and they'll find me and find out that I died by myself of an overdose, like once my body is like rotted and
Wow.
decomposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my changing point. So at that point, that was when I finally decided to make a real commitment because there was a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of years of being clean, then falling back into it. I remember being clean 2 years and then, you know, really avoiding triggers and then going, okay, I've been clean 2 years. I went to go to a party at the Playboy Mansion, and I was like, oh, I can handle it, this time. Like, I've been clean 2 years. And I went with some girlfriends I remember it was a Halloween, one of the,
Okay.
Halloween parties. And I wasn't working like as a painted girl or anything this year. I was just at a party. And I remember I was just like, you know, everybody's, there's certain parts of, the mansion to where, you can kind of go and
Mm-hmm.
anything goes. And I remember going there with friends because they wanted to party and, they've really been drinking already. And I was just like, oh, I can do it one time. I can do it one time. It's been 2 years. Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I have self-control. And that was it. That was all that it took. And that was the party. Like, I'd had 2 years clean. And then that evening, was what started and continued for like a few more years and then led to that last overdose that finally changed me.
So how long you been clean for now?
Going on like 12 years or so. Yeah. Which is so
Congratulations.
like, thank you. It's like intense to think about now, given how much it was a part of just my whole life. And my whole life was centered around it, And I think that's why I like certain types of modeling or scenes or work because it gave me an excuse to do it and it felt better doing it in those situations than being at home doing it for no reason, right?
Did you find? I mean, was would you say like? Because I mean, most people like when they're going through these these situations of trauma, they try to find things to deflect, to take their mind away from the things that are going on. Like, say, for example, as I said, like, going from sexual abuse, they're not necessarily people that want to be in that environment because it maybe possibly can put some triggers, but you did the opposite that sort of like added more triggers on. So like how did you balance that? Like how did you balance having all these things that were going on in your personal life and then having to deflect when you came into the work life?
Well, the way it worked for me, and like, I've always said, oh, someday maybe I'll write, kind of a book on this is like, I'm very candid and very honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I started working in, strip clubs. I moved out very young when I was 17. I was at odds, with my parents a lot, and my father didn't know what had happened to me, so he didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand why I had changed or become how I am. And the whole thing was that, at 18 years old, I'd already been like working two, three jobs, trying to support myself. And I remember getting into, that whole strip club industry through a friend of mine, her brother's girlfriend worked in it.
Okay.
And so, from there, but then also as addiction grew, certain things, I also then, entered that world of like, transitioning from it, having, a sugar daddy, having, seeing clients and escorting, all of that stuff. Nothing was
Mm-hmm.
untouched, right? But for myself, there was, and I understood it later once I got clean and started to heal, was for myself, there was kind of this disconnect of like my body and my sexuality had never been my own since I was a child, right? So there was this almost kind of strange distortion of like, well, what should be sacred or should be my own has never been my own. It's been taken from me by force so many times.
Mm-hmm.
So I may as well utilize it to my advantage and make money. And at least then I'm receiving something in return, right? That was the distortion I had because I did experience, even into adulthood, I did experience, rape by a photographer on a photo shoot that had even been set up by an agency, right? And so, that just further triggered, obviously, a lot of the issues that I already
Mm-hmm.
had. And so, one common thing I found working in those industries, working with women who were in them, was that I'd say like at least 90 something percent were women that had gone through, and even with a lot of the male dancers that I mean, the male side, had gone through the same experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is something that kind of can form and happen to where, either people become completely shut down or they tend to take the complete opposite route,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was a very common belief. And it wasn't only myself that held it, like, oh, well, it was never mine to begin with. So may as well, you know, this way I have full control. And it's a very distorted version of that. But unless you've gone through something like that, you can't understand how that would manifest psychologically for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But having seen it so many times, I realized, oh, this is a pattern. This is something that is common amongst many that are in these industries and have experienced that type of abuse.
But you being, I mean, obviously a world-renowned sex, icon per se, in the sense of a sex symbol, how did you like, where you're in front of cameras and, being the center of attention? How do you, with knowing what you went through, and with the things that you've experienced and those triggers, like, how do you fight the, what's the word? How do you fight in the sense, number one, like the temptations of falling back into those past traits of not viewing yourself not as a sex object, but in a sense as a sex symbol, and making sure that you're able to control the impulses that you weren't able to control back then?
It's just a non-issue now because the state that I come from is like very different, right?
Okay.
And it's kind of like more of a point of like I own and I love all that I am, right? So, sometimes people say, oh, like, there's certain comments or things on whatever, maybe on a YouTube you've done or something, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that must be hard to deal with. And I go, it doesn't bother me, right? That has nothing to do with who I am and anything. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
pay the mortgage. It doesn't pay my bills. I
Yep.
really could care less what anybody has to say. I could
Percent.
care less if somebody doesn't believe in my psychic abilities and anything. It makes no difference. I will
Mm-hmm.
still have hundreds of clients and people that do work with me. I will still always be able to make sure that my home is paid for, that my bills are paid for, right? And it comes, part of me is that it's about just being authentic. It's a different state to where I believe that, like, the funny thing is, like, if you look at United States culture, right, it's
Okay.
like sex sells everything, but then
Yep.
women are like condemned for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then if you look at other cultures, like you go to Europe, you go to certain places, and, a lot of the magazines that I shop for that were fashion related and things that are just normal publications to Greece, to,
Mm-hmm.
UK, were topless shots, right?
Yep.
To just like a magazine that you would purchase, whatever, advertisements, billboards that I would shoot that were
Mm-hmm.
fashion related were topless. That's completely normal in certain countries, right? When I would shoot music videos, like I remember shooting for like one of the ones for Ludacris and Enrique Iglesias, or
Mm-hmm.
shooting for Sandy Abel's music videos. We would shoot the American version and then we would shoot the European version, right? And one would be topless and the other would be in lingerie, right? And so there's a lot of hypocrisy in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost. And so, that's the whole thing, is that it's no longer a place of like, oh, this mentality of the unhealed self that's going, oh, I'm going to, use my sexuality in this way because my power was taken, and, this is how I'm going to take it back. And it's more so now just of like, I appreciate and then I enjoy taking care of myself. I have no shame in my body, no shame in my
Listen, if I look
sexuality.
like that, I would have no shame either. I would have no shame
Right?
either.
And so that's kind of where it is now. It's a place of like self-acceptance, love, and just authenticity, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
here's an example. I have had two boyfriends in my past, and one of them was somebody that I was engaged to, right?
Okay.
And I remember when I was with them, right? And again, cultural differences, like I'm not saying this is everybody, but they happen to come from just very, standard American families, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really experience the same issues with, say, other ethnicities that I had relationships with, right?
Okay.
And I remember them being like, oh, well, like my mom like has a problem with your pictures on your Instagram or your Facebook, and like how could you expect her not to like look what you post? And I'm like, you guys are fitness models. You post, shirtless pics. Like, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have boobs, but like still, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I go, look, I have aunties and cousins and uncles, like great aunties that are in their 60s, 70s. And if you go on my Facebook, those are the people going, oh, my sexy niece, I'm so proud
Mm-hmm.
of you, blah, 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 reposting the pictures that people would go, have some self-respect, right? Well, I do. I have plenty. It's just, I also come from like a background to where I do have a lot of family, and then these are women that are old school. If you talk to
Mm-hmm.
like my old ass great aunties, the ones in their 70s and stuff, and they are supporting me. Why should it matter to me what anybody has to say
Mm-hmm.
about whether I want to show my ass, show my boobs, whatever I want to do,
Because I
right?
mean, you know how it is. Because I mean,
It's
when it
cultural differences.
it's exactly. I mean, you don't normally see it per se, whether it be in the Indian culture or the Asian culture, and it's always considered sort
Mhm.
of like this sin. And I again, like to me, a body is a body, as you said. Sex is everywhere. Like you turn on the TV, it's sold. You go to a store, it's sold. So like I don't really see, like we all came into the world naked. Literally, we all came into the world naked. So I've never really understood like why people make an issue. So this is where it's going to bring my on that same subject, like where I heard this thing the other day where someone said, when it comes to women on Instagram,
Mhm.
that if a woman is on Instagram, say for example, who's in a relationship, showing the type of pictures that you show, which again, if I had your body, I'd be showing it off all damn day. But
Uh-huh.
they looked at that as if you're in a relationship, that's cheating, and a woman shouldn't do that in a relationship. But if a man does it, it's okay. So to me, I want to hear what are your thoughts in regards to that. Like I've heard people, for example, like when they get into relationships, they'll delete their social media because their partner is insecure, doesn't really want other guys. Like, what is your thought process on that? Do you feel that a woman, it's cheating if she's showing her skin off to other men, and B, have you ever had a situation where someone that you dated had a problem with your pictures and wanted you to delete your social media, and would you delete your social media if they asked you to?
Well, I get a lot of work, through my social media, whether that be, I haven't been shooting because I haven't felt good enough about my body for a few years. Now I finally do, right? But, I get a decent amount of work, whether it be for my intuitive readings, whether it be for like modeling opportunities, whatever, through my
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, right? And I do a lot of important networking there. I've come across a lot of great people through it, right? And so for myself, no, because that has to do with my business, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my whole thing is if you wanted to be in a relationship with me and you understood and know who I am,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then that's who I am, right? You knew what you were walking into, right? My loyalty to someone doesn't change based on that. Now, it depends. Am I engaging with other men in a certain way? Then that's different. But you don't have to be posting provocative pictures to be doing far worse on Instagram, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's more so, I think, what it's about. Like everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and I respect everyone's opinion. But for me, no, right? Because this is just it's just a part of who I am, right? I take pride in my body. I mean, I'm going to be 40 years old in less than a month, right?
And you
And
still look
I,
25. Like I don't know what the
thank
fuck is
you.
going on here. Like guys, you don't realize. Like I've known someone since 2003, and she looks the exact same, except the difference back then her hair was blonde and now it's brown. That's it.
Right? And so I go, I'm going to like love to look back and remember the days where I would proudly show my body off like that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I have a lot I'm sure I have a lot of family that judges me. I don't care. Those aren't the ones I'm focused on. I have a lot that support me and that are very proud of me and that are my biggest fans. And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, you know, like I have a cousin who's like, 60 and she loves to repost my stuff and just, brag about all the stuff, and she'll say, but what you don't realize is that, okay, you see this and that, but like she has like her own home, her own this, her that, like she's got a nice car, she's got a nice expensive lifestyle that she can afford on her own.
Mm-hmm.
She's a college graduate and she has all this stuff, right? Like basically, right, there's so much more
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of people. So we can say or think whatever we want to with others, but at the end of the day, it's about, can you look in the mirror and do you love yourself? Can you look at yourself every day and say that you're proud of who you are, that you love yourself? And if so, that's all that matters, right? As long as
100%.
you're not harming others, right? Like in social media, here's the thing. If I have a relationship with somebody, how we are engaging with other people. I've dated primarily, men that do have a very big following that are whatever, right? Like just generally speaking, I've always kind of, whether it's pro athletes, whether it's, other models, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
actors, that's always just kind of been, the types of men that I have been associated with and dated, right? The thing is, obviously, there are going to be a lot of women that maybe send pictures to them, that do whatever. What I
Mm-hmm.
care about is how are you engaging with them, right? Just like with me, there's always going to be a lot of men in my inbox, a lot of things. How am I engaging with them? That's what's more important. Am I polite? Do I keep it short beyond whatever, be respectful as needed? Or am I crossing certain lines? And that's what I believe in regards to social media relationships. You've got people that are not with huge followings, that aren't public, images,
Mm-hmm.
that are doing much worse. And they
Mm-hmm.
might be posting just their Sunday pictures and their conservative dresses all day, right? It's not about what you're posting. It's about how are you engaging. That's what I personally care about,
So I mean,
right?
would you? I mean, there's a flip side because, as I said, like, would you have an issue, or do you see an issue that if a man, for example, is posting sexy selfies and whatever you want to call them on the internet, would you have an issue with that? Like if he was showing that type of skin to women and women are hitting him up in the inbox and whatever, as you said, like crossing the line, what would you consider as crossing the line?
If he's like, say, flirting with them, it's, continuously messaging with them, like, trying to establish some type of communication to meet certain things like that, right? Exchanging photographs, perhaps, or accepting them from them willingly.
Mm-hmm.
But I've dated men like that. And I've
Okay.
dated, not the ones that are, say, doing that shady stuff, but I mean that I've dated, that are posting like shirtless pictures all the time and stuff. And
Guys,
that
stop posting
doesn't bother.
social photos on the internet.
No, no, if they have
That's
a
a lot
good
of shit.
body, there's nothing wrong with that, is what I'm saying. Well, for me, right, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But like I said, it's like, okay, how are you engaging with your fans or those that are doing whatever,
Well,
right? Like,
there's a whole subject with that because I mean there is been a study that
mhm,
has gone on where they say that men that post a lot of selfies and a lot
uh-huh.
of shirtless selfies are either the most narcissistic, the most controlling, or the most violent psychopath men. What do you think on that? In
I
your
think that
experience?
can be true. I have encountered it before,
Hmm.
but is it true for all? No, not for all. It's
So
just like everything else. There's always going to be good and there's always going to be bad, and it's just what category of what you choose on your own free will, right? I don't like to group all people into one thing, and I will
hmm
never be someone who does that, right? Like at the end of the day, right? A lot of people would have grouped me before, oh, well, she was involved in this kind of work, she did this stuff. Yeah, if you actually know how Hollywood and all of that stuff works, your Victoria's Secret models, you're this, you're that, more people than not are involved in that kind of work. It's just who's open about it, who's honest about it, right?
and that's
Everybody in those
exactly.
industries is up for sale and has a price tag. Just, just what is it,
And that's the
right?
thing, and
Like,
that's the thing that I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I'm like, me, I don't give a shit what somebody does. Like
mhm, yeah,
if you want to spread your legs, fuck some dude, do this, do that.
do
Like
it.
I don't care.
Yeah,
But
as long as it
just
doesn't bother me.
well, it's not about that. It's about, as you said, it's about being honest about it. But this is where I like where this OnlyFans shit has annoyed the crap out of me because you've got girls that are in the industry, as you said, claiming to be models, claiming to be this, but then they're on OnlyFans doing the fucking and sucking and all that other stuff, and then they're still trying to portray this like squeaky clean image to me, which is obviously like hurt the industry. I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, do you feel that these platforms now have hurt the industry or benefited the industry?
I don't really have an opinion of it hurting or benefiting. I think it's just changed it, right? Like I used to have like a nude model website,
Okay.
but back in the day, the way it was like, it was a pay site, but this was way before the OnlyFans days, right? And it was like, more Playboy style nudes. It was nothing,
Okay.
that crazy, right? And I would auction off clothes, lingerie, everything that I ever worn in photo shoots, things in magazines, because I could sell an outfit I wore, say, in Playboy for like a few $1,000s, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was done differently, right? Like I had full control over that. I had a whole team, a webmaster, videographer, etc. And it kind of worked in conjunction with everything else that I did. But I was never somebody who pretended to not do nude work, not pretended to not do whatever other stuff, right? Because there
Mm-hmm.
were certain things that they would not want maybe me to represent a brand because, okay, well, you've worked with Playboy, you've worked with Penthouse, you have these kinds of photos, you have a pay website, totally fine,
Mm-hmm.
right? I didn't try to ever fit into this good girl mode, and I never have, like I'm just kind of like, this is me. I mean, there was a time in my life where I did kind of try to hide, certain things about like sex work back in the day. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's a long time behind me now, over a decade now, right? But it's like, I don't hide what my past was. Like
And you shouldn't.
everything,
And you
yeah,
shouldn't.
everything then that I did, I was still very honest about who I was. And I was always kind of a take it or leave it situation, whether that's love relationships, whether that was whatever I'm doing, even, as an intuitive, right? How much, oh my gosh, like I dealt with going into that industry from peers. Oh, and even in fitness, I remember being told by women who were getting no magazines.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was when I'd already gotten a few publications saying, Carla, you really shouldn't have these kinds of lingerie pictures of certain things on your Facebook still or on your Instagram. And I remember just being like, nah, it never stopped me from getting these other publications that are fitness, right? Even before I wanted to be a fitness model.
Okay.
And then the irony was the same ones who judged me never even got published in a single thing, whereas I still continued to throughout the years. And, now I'm finally getting back into where I feel good about my body, getting to those photographers that I've worked with from magazines, they're fitness related in other industries. I'm now like in a place to where I feel like, okay, I'm ready to start shooting again because now I feel good about me, right? Even though they would say, hey, you're ready, and they've asked me for like the last couple of years, I didn't feel good. I didn't want to see what I would look like in
I don't know
something,
what the hell you're talking about.
even
I've never
though
seen you not look good. So I don't know what you're smoking. I've never seen you ever not in shape, not with abs, not with booty, not with everything else going on point. So I don't know what the hell you were thinking that you had an off day in the last 15 years because I haven't seen it.
well, thank you. I'm like, I did. I had a, severe hormonal issue going on, and until it got under control, just my body fat was higher than it was, meant to be. My muscles were literally eating themselves alive.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's been under control now for about, 7, 8 months. And once it got under control, my body just started to go back to what it was. And I'm hitting my goals now. I said I want to have like a similar body that I had when I was shooting fitness magazines back in my late 20s at
Okay.
like when I turned 40. And I, had measurements taken the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm like there, like my waist is back down to 22
Mm-hmm.
inches. Like it's been a while since I've had that, but I've maintained, my goal was to maintain like that curvier figure at the same time. So it's taking a different approach. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out so far.
Guys, welcome to another edition of Hot Topic CelebTV.com. I'm your host, D-Teflon on the MIC. Tonight, joining us, the beautiful Carla Maria in the building. Don't forget, of course, you can check us out every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and every Sunday, Hollywood in Conversation on HotTopicCelebTV.com. Don't forget, of course, you can find us on iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Facebook. So, Carla, I wanted you to tell the viewers, I mean, obviously you made this transition of starting your company. I want you to tell people the name of it and as well how you got this started and what was the reason for starting this this new journey for yourself.
Okay. Well, my company is guidedbydivine.com. So it's just it's on the Instagram, it'll be on the everything else. But basically, I've had intuitive gifts since I was a child. I kind of pushed them away and they kind of went dead on me for a while due to
Okay.
substance abuse, right? And I actually used substances in order to shut them down because I didn't like them for a long time. And, we discussed kind of when I, had that final overdose and, finally decided that I was going to change my life and get clean for good. And one of the things I struggled with in AA and Narcotics Anonymous as well was belief in a higher power, right? Because given the kind of hardship I'd gone through, starting around 4 years old till about 14 continuously, it was very difficult to have a belief and faith in God and the higher power, right? Because you go, well, if that's possible, then how do innocent children and even myself have to go through this and continue this, abuse and sexual abuse especially, right? And so I struggled with that for a long time, and that was part of why I struggled with the 10 steps.
Okay.
And I believed in the non-physical. I believed in spirits and all of this because I knew I could see them and perceive them and hear them and talk to them, right? But as far as something bigger, I struggled with it. And when I finally began my healing path, I remember my sponsor said to me, in order for you to heal, she goes, you've had 2 years clean, year and a half clean. She said, it's not about the physical addiction for you anymore. She said, you've got to get to the bottom of why you use. She said, because that's why you go back, because there's a reason that you use drugs. What are you running away from? What don't you want to look at? And when you heal that, you'll stay clean. And I got into, I'd gone to therapists for like decades and it didn't work. Nothing helped. And I remember finally just kind of out of like desperation going into receiving like energy work, hypnotherapy, and those types of things to help me with both addiction and also healing, that sexual abuse. And what I found was that through those means, I was able to see and feel shifts within a matter of months that I didn't get in 10 years of therapy. And then it kind of transitioned to where all of a sudden now I'm clean, my psychic gifts are opening and blossoming very quickly. And then I go, okay, now I needed help to learn to manage these things so I can live a normal day-to-day life. And that's how I then started taking classes. I had no intention of doing it for work, but I chose to make that transition in order to just kind of manage my energy, know how to, do what I needed to do, be left alone by spirit when I wanted to be left alone. And then it kind of became clear, and I started receiving the guidance that, like, I knew I'd always, in my heart, wanted to eventually branch out to helping women leave sex-related industries, right? Because I knew and I saw how it was a trap for a lot of people. And I knew that there were a lot of women who were in it that were healing from certain things that brought them to it to begin with, and that would want to leave but would be stuck. And so I realized suddenly, oh, this was the way that I was going to do it. This was how I was supposed to. And I started actually just, I remember once I began my business, I was very concerned about working with people in person, right?
Why?
Because I didn't want male clients to work with me because of how I look or try to victimize me or rape me or do something, because when you're doing, one-on-one sessions somewhere, if back then I did Reiki, where it's hands-on, etc., or you might go to somebody's home to work on them. I only work via Zoom these days, right? But there was, of course, those types that would want to, and even still to this day, I get men that go, oh, I want an in-person session. I'm like, I don't do that, right? Because if you're serious about your work and your healing and your reading, you'll be fine with Zoom. You don't need me in front of you. I work with clients all over the world, right? Like in
Hmm.
Australia, Europe, Asia, Africa, everywhere, right? And these are people who've worked with me for years. So if it wasn't as effective, they wouldn't do it.
But is that a
And
fear
so
for you? Sorry, is that a fear for you in regards to like
this
not putting
experience,
yourself? Yeah, like from your
no,
past
not
experiences.
anymore.
Okay.
Like, I remember a teacher I had said to me, well, just clear your limiting beliefs and programs that you have to work with people in person. She's like, go through your levels, use the tools you have, and release any programs that you have to create that reality that people only work with you in person. So I did. I spent a couple months doing it. And I launched my business pretty much entirely online from that point. And I was able to start to kind of bring in the people. One of the things I teach is manifestation and how to use energy and, different types of things and clearing out our blockages to bring in and create the reality that we want for ourselves. And I
Hmm.
remember being in certain energy healing classes and being kind of ostracized by certain spiritual, what I call spiritually egotistical healers, right? Because
Hmm.
sometimes, I'll be honest, there would be women that would have a spiritual ego that they wouldn't be the most physically attractive, but it'd be like, oh, but I'm intuitive. Oh, I'm a healer. So I'm spiritual, and therefore this is what I have over those women, right? So to see me walk in, how I am, I
Hmm.
dress the way I do, right, was very triggering for some of them. It'd be
Hmm.
like, okay, because all of a sudden this thing you've built your identity and spiritual ego around, here's somebody that challenges it, right? And, again, I faced it just like when I first got into fitness modeling. Oh, people aren't going to take you seriously as a healer and
Yeah, that's
this
what I was
and
going to
that
ask you. That's
because,
what I was going to ask you. Like,
right?
how do
Oh,
you, how do people,
it
how do
was
people,
the worst
yeah,
in that.
how do people, how do people take you? I mean, how do you find people to able to take you seriously? Obviously, I said being this
Yeah.
beautiful, gorgeous woman on the outside who dresses really well, is always in the best clothes, but like in a business aspect to take you seriously, how do you break down that barrier?
Well, for myself personally, I cleared out all of the limiting beliefs. I started working on manifesting and bringing in, the people that I wanted, the people that would need me. But I also understood and realized, and I had a great teacher who taught me this and said, Carla, people will be drawn to you as a healer and as an intuitive because you're a real person.
Hmm.
You're not some, oh, like halfway here, halfway out of the planet, bohemian dress wearing no deodorant wearing type of woman, and people will like that, right? She's
Hmm.
like, you will appeal to them because, yeah, you're a high maintenance girl who likes to have luxury cars and a million and one designer purses and shoes, right?
Yes,
Which
you
I do.
do.
That
Yes, you
has
do.
not changed,
Hmm.
right? And so when I went this path, I remember saying to my guides, and y'all better keep me in my bougie lifestyle because I'm not going to drop everything I do to do this if I can't, right? But that's what a lot of people are drawn to about me. They like the fact because there's a lot of distortion in spirituality. Oh, if you're spiritual, you shouldn't want to have this and that. It's about non-attachment. You shouldn't be
Okay.
attached to it. But there's nothing wrong with abundance in certain things, and especially abundance if you are doing so in a way to then benefit others, right? I find that when you are trying to manifest or create abundance, if you're coming from a heart-centered place, and your intentions are good and you are helping others, it comes easily, it flows,
Hmm.
right? And so for myself, one of the things that is about me is that I am the healer that people feel comfortable going to because they don't go, I'm going to go on a spiritual path and lose my desire to run my company, do this and that. They understand the value of having spiritual health, how that ties to your emotional state, your well being, your mental state, and all aspects in between, right? But that they can still have that drive and like it's okay to have and to want and to desire to have a nice home, a nice car, nice clothes, whatever that may be, look good,
Hmm.
right? And so I then kind of, again, I've been fortunate, right? Like I put my faith in the universe and it's brought me a lot of people. And I remember just being told if you show up as you are authentically and you tell your story and you can just own everything, people will find you and they'll be drawn to you based on that. And so I did actually, when I went into this business, a lot of my clientele was women
Hmm.
whose word of mouth I knew through industries that were struggling to get out of them started contacting me for help. And from there, even just through random, people would hear me on a podcast, they would see me on a radio show. And I think some of the most impactful was working with men because men don't talk about sexual abuse. Men don't talk about this. And being able to see very kind of like the way I communicate, my realistic approach, and that I have no judgment, right?
Your
I
opinion, though,
have
why do you feel that men don't talk about that, those sexual abuse experiences as much as women do?
because there's a different type of shame. There's always shame that comes with it, but for men, it's the way that it makes them feel in regards to their masculinity, right?
Hmm.
Um, and also culture, right? The way that we are taught and the way that men are taught to handle emotions and to not deal with certain things. And for men, it's also like a part of it, unfortunately, that I found is because what their predators will often do is just to kind of, because it also has to do at the end of the day with how a man experiences arousal, meaning that, somebody who victimized them, who did whatever, will use the fact that they were, say, able to, whether, because there's a lot of means in which, like, they would arouse, like a young man, right? And to confuse it, to make it almost seem as if they wanted it, they whatever, right? Like, whether it be through stimulation, showing them pornographic images, whatever, to make it seem as if it was their fault. And so when men carry these things, they carry it in a very different way. And it's just as much as with women. Men are often not believed when it
Hmm.
comes out. And so I have a huge amount of, because I've also found with a lot of men that I worked with that were, say, prisoners, people that are incarcerated out on parole, have committed certain types of crimes, have addiction issues, whatever it may be, that was also a common theme. And so, they're comfortable with working with me. They understand there's, the approach that I take and the fact that I've been through it
Hmm.
and I've been through certain things makes people know that they can come to me about anything and I will never judge a single thing. I've worked with people who've committed murder, right? I've worked with people who've done what someone considered to be atrocious crimes. They say, oh, they don't deserve this and that. Well, I don't believe
Hmm.
that. I believe that anybody who wants to heal deserves a chance,
But for
right?
someone who doesn't know like what a spiritual healer is, what would your definition be for that?
Well, it can vary, right? Very much. Like, Um, I say that there's all different types and forms and levels, right? There's the Reiki healers, there's crystal healers, there's something else, and I do all those. I'm certified in all that. But
Hmm.
what my specialty is something that I refer to as intuitive counseling, which means that, you know, yes, certain types of modalities go into the subconscious mind, but I also then am able to look at past life patterning, soul patterning, the lessons that the soul wants to learn, and also to kind of the creational aspect of how it's manifested in our human physical lives, right? So I can find what are the blockages that they're carrying. Like when you have a pattern you can't break, when you have certain fears you can't overcome, right? I, as an intuitive, can then go in and see, well, what's the root of this, right? Be it spiritual, physical, past life, a combination of, and then from there begin kind of working with them to change those programs on those higher levels, right, where it
Hmm.
all occurred. And so there's a varying degree of reasons. A lot of people start with me for psychic readings, and generally in a psychic reading, something will come up to where I'll be told, like, there's some pattern or something they want to break, and this is why they can't do it, right? And oftentimes they won't even tell me what it is,
Hmm.
right? And I'll just be like, hey, just share this with them, give them the option to know that they can get help. And a lot then transitions to also healing work. So many come to me for psychic readings at first, advisement, certain things, right? Whether it's why they can't leave toxic relationships, why they attract the same kind of person, blah, 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 blocks in their careers. And, once they receive things and they see those shifts happening, they tend to come back.
You brought up something earlier though, like in regards to sex work per se, and you know you having that past experience, and this is a subject that a general hot topic that I want to bring into this conversation where you know, there's obviously, where women who have worked, say, for example, in that industry, who are currently working in the industry, and have been, as you said, like, a victim, or I don't like to use the word victim, but they will claim to be a victim per se of sexual abuse. But then there's this debate where someone says, as you said, going back to where someone could be sexual, not necessarily get into sex work, but just be an actual sexual person.
Mhm.
How do you define the difference between someone, say, for example, who works in the sex industry, who is a victim per se of sexual abuse, but there's that argument, well, how can it be sexual abuse if they're working in the sex industry? What's your thought process on that?
Well, like I'm still a person who is very sexual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's just a part of who I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can be sexual and still be a sexual abuse survivor, right? It's just a lot of them were people who experienced it in childhood, and then it changed into a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how it's kind of manifested, right? So, but you can still be a sex worker and experience sexual abuse, right? You can be a sex worker, be sexual, and experience rape, right? I do know women who, in those industries, have been raped by a client. You might say, well, how? Well, if she doesn't, choose to perform certain acts, perform certain things, or she refuses to not use protection and somebody forces that upon her, or sometimes, women have been beat up, they have been held at gunpoint. That's something that I have unfortunately had friends experience in the past,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those types of things, anything that is not consensual. You can still have the freedom to say no or to walk away, from a client, a situation, right? But if you are forced to do something that you do not want to do, it doesn't matter what your title is or whether you've done something before.
But
Doing
what do
something
you say to
against
the
somebody.
people? But what do you say to the people that will say, that if that female or that male wasn't in that industry, then they wouldn't be put into that situation for it to happen. And
Mhm.
the other flip side is that, like, where if they're, obviously, yes, rape is rape. That's a whole separate subject. But, like, in the sense of sexual abuse, how does someone defend being in that industry, the credibility of saying, okay, well, you know what, like, I didn't ask for it, and have people to be able to believe them that
Mhm.
they didn't ask for that.
Well, that can be a difficult thing, because unfortunately, people have a lot of empathy and things for children
Mm-hmm.
that when they find out, right? But they don't for the people who've survived through it and have become adults to have to live with it.
True.
And the one thing that I would just say to them is that people need to maybe open their minds to things and to understand more from a broader perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't, you know, judge and just say, oh, because of this and that, right? Like because of blah, blah, blah. If you can have empathy and understanding for an innocent child who's been through something, you should also have it for somebody, regardless of what their industry may be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because at the end of the day, if you took those same people and they experienced something, right, of that, whether they were raped, whether they were sexually abused, whether it was whatever, unfortunately, most of them would probably destroy them much more because they don't have the strength
Mm-hmm.
that somebody who had to endure it very young went through, right? When you have had an easy childhood to adulthood, it's very easy to judge. It's very easy to say, right? But I would say to those people that they just need to put themselves in that person's shoes and go, okay, maybe not that industry, but it doesn't matter, right? If you're talking about a human being, period, right? The
Mm-hmm.
violation of a person is not okay. And if, it's complete hypocrisy to me. But like I said, unfortunately, some people are very close minded,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's how it is. It's like they can make excuses for certain things, they can say whatever, but you know, at the end of the day, it's like if they have not been in that situation, they have no right to judge, and therefore whatever they have to say would mean nothing to me. Unless you have walked a similar path or gone through certain hardships, nothing that you say about me or like anybody of those industries of anything is going to have any sort of meaning to me because you don't know, right? If you don't understand what brought somebody to certain decisions, certain
Hmm.
things, you know, that's that's not my problem, right? Like this, it just doesn't. That's why it's like, oh, when if people have tried to attack me before, say certain things, it doesn't matter to me because I just go, I have gone through more hardship and challenges, in my now almost 40 years of life than most people would go through in 10 lifetimes in a
Hmm.
physical body, right? So it doesn't matter, right? Because I know that a lot of these people, the smallest thing happens, they go through a breakup. Oh my gosh, like, oh, they lose a loved one and the whole world crashes around them. They go into this
Hmm.
state of depression, they're destroyed, you know? Well, I've had all of that times like 100, plus all of these other things I've had to deal with, right? And so for myself, I go, what does it matter
But who
for
do you feel you have
anybody?
more judgmental when it comes to you and your situations? Is it more men or is it more women?
Always women,
Okay.
generally women. It's always women, and I understand why. Because it's just I trigger women, and I get it, and that's usually it, right? So the nasty comments I get on Instagram, anything else, it's always usually women that want to come on or go on their husband's or boyfriend's page, saw he liked my pic and write something, and I don't engage. I just okay, cool, delete, block, whatever. You know what
So
I'm
how do you
saying?
deal
Like
with it? How do you deal with it?
I just delete or block because to me, I actually feel badly for people like that. I feel very bad because I go, God, like for you to have to do that means that you were that triggered and that emotionally upset,
Hmm.
right? To do that or to write something on some stranger's thing. And I'm sorry that you feel so insecure and so triggered because I would never do something like that. That just is something that's beyond me because I'm just kind of like, do you, if you are beautiful and you want to show it off, or even if you're not and you want to show it off, then so be it, right? Like live and let live. But it shows a whole different level of insecurity and hurt when somebody does that. So I actually have empathy for it. I'm not going to engage. I'll never go off on someone if anybody writes something bad about what I have to say, about my opinion. Oh, you don't have those gifts, whatever, it will be fine. It's okay. The truth doesn't care if you believe it or not. I know my truth. And that's all
Hmm.
that matters, right? You're not my client. That's great. I will always have clients. I will always have people because I know I'm good at what I do. I know that I'm accurate, right? The few people that want to say, oh, different types of, things, that's okay.
Give me an
But I'm not going
example.
to
Give me an example in the sense of like the harshest thing that someone has said in regards, whether it be social media or to you in regards to what you do now. And have you ever been in a situation where someone has tried to use your past against you?
always, many times. And that's why I own it so beautifully now. When I left the industry, right, of like having, been an escort, done those things,
Hmm.
there was and she's still out there, and she was very disgruntled at me. She believed that I wrote all these things on some review website calling her these things. It wasn't, right? It was a booker that I had used that was upset that I left that agency and
Okay.
all that. And I remember that she specifically, you know, screenshotted all of the stuff of like, and it was like, just a few months before I exited. I was just stacking money. And I remember that she would go on my Instagram and she'd go, because I'm transitioning now to my new life, like, oh, does everybody know that like you're just a hooker, you're just this and that, and even she stalked out like my family's emails and sent
Wow.
these things to them, right? And would go on my Facebook and go on my Instagram and write these things. And then I've also experienced it before from like an ex that I had domestic violence with. So I'm no stranger to defamation. And at that time, I used to feel like I had to hide who I was. And
Hmm.
then I realized at a certain point, you know what? The only power anybody has over me is the fact that I have not owned myself, my past, and who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I took that away, once I took that power back and I just said, this is who I am, this is what I've
Mm-hmm.
done, blah, 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 but this is who I am now, right? All of a sudden, everything was gone from me. I was liberated because there was nothing anyone could throw in my face anymore, say about me, do, or use to hurt me, right? Every partner I've had, every relationship, even in the early stages of dating, I tell them my past. I've never hidden it.
Have they
I
ever?
went to a
Has any one of the one you told ever been like, okay, I'm out, like peace out?
no, because it's in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's not who I am. Even when I was involved in those industries, I would say I don't want to get involved in a relationship because this is what I do. And I'm not willing to change right now. I did
Mm-hmm.
have one relationship where I agreed to do it, and then it turned out very poorly, and he became abusive and all these things, and that was one of the ones who, and then went on a whole smear campaign of me, right? Dragged me through horrible lawsuits, all this kinds of stuff, which was whatever. That's a thing of the past, right? But the thing was, too, again, the only power was that I didn't own who I was, that
Mm-hmm.
I was not whatever. And so, when I became a healer and all these things, there was still that looming fear of, oh, what if people find out about my past? They won't take me seriously. And then I just decided, you know what? Like, I don't care anymore, right? And I just said, I'm going to put it all out there because at some point in time, perhaps I become a really big psychic. Perhaps I have a show. Perhaps I have whatever. Then what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with it. Don't like it, then don't work with me. It doesn't change the fact that I'm very good at what I do. Right? And my clients know, I'm sure my clients are going to watch this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things my clients love and respect about me is that I am authentic.
Thank.
Right?
That's what
I
I
am
love about you,
authentic.
man. That's what I love about you because you've always kept it 100.
Yeah, because I just don't care. Like I'm not a woman who has to have a man, who has to have this and that. I love myself and I like my life and I have a very good life that
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for. So if someone doesn't accept something about me, they're not for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I never get married or if I end up finally settling down when I'm 45, whatever that may be, that's God's plan for me, right? At the end of the day, I love me. So I can't bring someone into my space if they don't love me as much as I love me. And that means loving all
What's not to
of the
love about
things
you, man? What's
that
not to
make
love
me,
about? What's
right?
not to love about you? Literally, I just want to just wake up and see that closet every morning and start my day, man. I don't even, honestly, you probably have about $2 million worth of clothes and designer bags in that thing, man. It's incredible to watch you unfold every day. I'm like, every day is like a red carpet for this woman. Like every morning, I'm like, and she's just going to the beach or she's going to a restaurant, and I'm like, where are all these clothes coming from? Like I don't understand. Like it's like someone's just falling them through your house and just saying, here, try this on, try this on.
No, I'm so bad. It's like I know, and that's one thing I need to work on. It's like I was joking with a friend the other day. I'm like, I bought so many swimsuits this season that like I'm stressed out. I'm not going to wear them all before like the summer ends, right? Like, and she and I were joking, which is like a great problem to
Mm-hmm.
have. But I was just like legit. I've got like 20 something swimsuits I've not yet worn.
You'll wear them. Guys, I
I
want you
will.
to
I'll
drop
wear
your
them all.
questions in the comments below. If you want to ask Carla a question, please drop your comments below. If you want to ask her live, send an invite request on here, and we will drop you into the conversation to ask her a question live. But while we're waiting for those comments to come through, I want to ask you some random Q&A questions, and I want you to just answer them as quickly as you can. If you
Okay.
could learn the answer to one question about your future, what would the question be?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, um I would like to know how many children do I have? I already know, but I would like to confirm because the number wavers
How many
between
children do you have, or how many children you will have?
well, I will
Okay.
have because it wavers between 1 to 2, so I'd like to know the exact number.
Time freezes for everyone, but you for one day. What do? Go to the beach.
Yeah, go to like a beach, probably one of the beaches like in a very like remote area of the planet that's completely untouched and to just enjoy it
What is
all the
something you are obsessed with?
oh my gosh, like designer purses and shoes.
What's your favorite way to waste time?
My oh, that's easy. Going to the beach.
What is something popular now that annoys you?
Hmm. I don't know. I just don't engage in anything. I guess I'd say, I think it's like all the social medias. I just can't keep up on all that, and I don't have the patience to. I don't. I'm not that technologically advanced either. So
What do you do to get rid of stress?
meditate, go to the beach.
3 words that best describe you.
Okay. Intuitive is number one. Compassionate and non-judgmental.
Where is the most beautiful place you've been?
Most beautiful place. I personally would say Bora Bora. I love Bora Bora.
What's the most relaxing place you've ever been?
Again, I that's why I think I like Bora Bora. I found it very relaxing and peaceful for me.
What word or saying from the past do you think should come back?
Oh, word. Saying. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I still say hella. I'm a Bay Area girl, so.
What was the last what was the last movie you watched?
I can't even remember at this point. I turn on my television once every 10 weeks.
Think of the last Netflix you watched. What was the last Netflix you watched?
Last Netflix I watched. I watched like Netflix shows. Like I
Okay.
got hooked on that show Ratchet a long
Okay.
time.
Do you prefer to watch movies in the comfort of your home or in a theater?
I like going to a theater, but I just haven't seen any recently that I really
Well, there's no theater, Carla, that will let you in with a bikini on. So,
care to.
what was the last funny video you saw today?
Last funny video. I didn't really watch any today, unfortunately. Uh, I think, gosh, I don't know, something involving animals, I'm sure. I always like those ones.
What's a secret talent that no one knows about you?
Secret talents that no one knows about me. I don't think I have any unless everybody knows what they are. But one of them
Something
that
that you do, something that you do that nobody would
I
know,
do,
or any of these viewers who
I,
are watching would know, not know.
okay, I can hear people's thoughts about me a lot of the time. So when people think negatively about me or when people are talking about me, especially if they have any relationship with me, I can see it, I can hear it, I can see who they're speaking to.
Is that when you're interacting with them, or is that just in your thought process?
No, that's just psychically through it's like a defense mechanism. So if somebody's talking poorly about me, I see to who it is, what setting they're in. Um, like I dated a guy and I remember he had talked about me to his therapist. And I remember seeing him in this certain office with a bookshelf. I saw, what the therapist looked like. And later that day, he
Mm-hmm.
goes, oh, I brought you up to my therapist. And I said, oh, like, does his office have this big bookshelf with all these books? And does he look like this? Blah, blah, blah. I described the office. And he goes, oh, yeah, do you go to him? And I said, no. I said, I saw you talking about me to somebody. And that was the setting. I said, but it wasn't anything bad you were saying, so I just shut it off. I didn't feel like I needed to listen to it anymore.
What song always puts you in a good mood?
Oh gosh. I would have to say like probably like 93 like till infinity. Like
Which
any
one?
old 93 till infinity or like any of like, Souls of Mischief, like
Okay.
that old school like hip hop,
I
old
haven't
Bay
heard Souls of
Area hip
Motion in
hop.
a long time. That's a good
Oh
choice.
my gosh,
I would
yeah.
never have
Well,
thought that was you. Would never have thought that was
Okay,
you.
but like think about my age,
Yeah.
coming back in that era. You know what I'm saying? I'm a different generation than most.
Listen, man, that was when life was real, man. That was when life was real. Are there
Oh
any
yeah.
songs that right now, or is there a song that you hear that every time you hear it, it makes you cry?
No.
No?
No,
This
not
is a
so.
badass, Carla. Um, who was the first band or musician you were really into?
First band or musician.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have. like I remember really loving Salt and Pepper back when I was like a
Okay.
teenager, like absolutely loving them. And
What?
TLC.
Good choices. Good choices. What are the three best apps right now on your phone that you use constantly?
That I use constantly.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, besides, I would have to say, unfortunately, my Zoom. I'm always
Okay.
on my Zoom, right? Whether that's with clients, family, friends. I love to use my Instagram quite a bit as well.
Okay.
And the last one, as lame as it sounds, my time zone converter. I am obsessed with my time zone converter. It's like,
Why?
no, I'm serious. Like not having to go online and look up time zone differences. I kept messing up international clients for like a good solid couple of years, and then like this time converter app that like makes it so simple came out, and it was like life change.
So a mysterious app appears right now on your phone and it does
Mhm.
something amazing. What does it do?
What does it do? It helps me to track and to find out like where my new clients are and how I could reach them.
Of course. Since you are to me the best dressed woman literally on Instagram, what is a fashion trend that you're really glad went away?
That I'm really glad went away.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Like none of them really bother me. I just kind of stay like committed to what I like. So I can't really think of any because if I just don't like it, I don't pay attention, you know?
Something from the past, like something from the past that you thought was super ugly that came into style, and you were like, it's no longer there. So now you're just like glad it's gone. No, it's gone.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I can't really think of one. Like maybe certain types of shoes that I think are ugly, but like I
You
don't
never had
know.
something you
Like
wore in the past that you were like, I would never be like, I can't believe I even. When you look at old pictures, you're like, the fuck was I wearing? Like, what was I thinking wearing that?
I mean, not really, because I just kind of laugh it off, like, oh, fashion is so weird. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
maybe the like really, really thick platform shoes, but I still would like those if I was a go-go dancer still. You know what I'm saying? So I think everything kind of has its time and place. Yeah.
Since you were always the style queen, what is the most comfortable piece of clothing you own?
I live in dresses, right? I just love like a nice bodycon dress that hugs the body and that is easy for me to move in. Like it's actually very difficult for me to find clothes that fit me well at my height and just my proportions.
Hmm.
So that's why I stick to dresses.
How many pairs of shoes do you own?
um, I did sell a bunch because I felt that I should not own more than 100 pairs. So I
What?
believe I
What?
have like
100 pairs of shoes? What are you? What are
yeah,
you
and
like?
they're
Aldo? Like, what?
no, they're all like Gucci, Louis Vuitton, like Versace, Dior, Fendi's, right? They're all good shoes, but
Okay.
I think I have like 85 pairs now.
Jesus Christ, have mercy. What then, if for you, then is the most ridiculous thing that you've ever bought? Then?
I don't think anything's ridiculous.
Something that you spent like a crazy amount of money, and you were like, I probably shouldn't have spent all that money on that.
Well, there have been like maybe okay, actually, I've found ways to wear it. I bought outfits to match with it,
Okay.
but like I did, I remember purchasing like, and it was like on sale at like Saks, which is how I somehow justified it. Like there was this, it's one of the small Fendi like, night bags, and it's like purple and gold and pink, right? And I remember being like, I don't know what I'm gonna wear this with, but I really, really, really like it. And yeah, I did spend like a few thousand on it, but it was on sale. And I have worn it a few times in the last year, so I bought a bunch of dresses to match it specifically so I could wear it. So that's probably what
Well, since you are one of the most wanted women in the world, what is the funniest pickup line you've ever heard?
I don't know. I really can't tell you.
On you,
What
like
the,
what is something that you thought that someone tried to say to you that what you thought was just super cheesy?
ah, I can't even think. I mean, there's just a lot of cheesy things people say. I
What
think more often
anyone
than
that comes off the
not, things
top of
are
your head?
cheesy.
Anyone that comes off the top of your head?
I don't know, people just say like, oh, I think I know you, or we will work together, or this and that. Like, I literally at the beach, like not that long ago, had some guy come up to me and ask me if I went to such and such high school. And I was just like, how old is your father?
If you could call up anyone in the world and have a 1 hour conversation with, who would you call? Living or dead?
Your dad. Probably my dad's mom, my grandmother, my Lolita. I never got to meet her, but she would visit me a lot as a child and has been kind of very present on my spiritual journey and assisting me and guiding me throughout my path. So her, without a doubt.
Who then would you most likely like to sit next to on a 10-hour flight, and why?
On a 10-hour flight.
Living or dead?
Living or dead? I don't really know. Probably, hmm. I would love to like honestly just have my grandpa, my maternal grandfather, or just head out just for a little bit. That would be my one wish if I could have him back for tonight.
Who is your
Or,
favorite? Yep, go ahead.
my high school sweetheart who passed away when I was like 21.
I'm
It'd be nice
sorry.
to have him. Oh no, it's okay.
Who is your favorite entertainer, comedian, musician, and actor?
Oh gosh, I don't have any like favorites at all. That's the thing. I really don't like. I have, some I like, but um, I can't even answer those. I'm sorry. I just
No musician, no
no favorites. You know what I mean? Like no
top three.
particular top three.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think one of my musicians forever will be like Snoop. I always have loved him growing up, and
Okay.
especially back in the days with all his collaborations with Tupac. Oh my God! Like, if I could bring Tupac back and like sit with him on a plane, yeah, I freaking love that because I still play all his music in my car, and when I'm
It's just
with him
crazy. Like
all the time,
the
all the
girl is a
time.
fashion icon, and I can't picture you in like a $7,000 dress driving down Melrose listening to Tupac. That's just a thought that I would love to see.
Oh, oh my God, are you kidding? Ask any of my close friends. Like, ask any of my close friends, For comedians, gosh, I don't know. Like, I'm not too sure. There's a
Is there not a
few.
comedian you watch on Netflix or somebody that makes you laugh
Yeah.
like whenever you see their stuff?
I mean, I do love Joe Coy, a lot,
Yep.
like quite a bit, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, we are planning to see him in December. So I'd say that's probably one of my favorites, like at this time,
Okay.
for sure. Uh-huh.
If you
And then
were a personal, yeah, if you were a personal mascot, what type of mascot would you be?
I'd probably be like some kind of exotic cat, like a
I can
jaguar
see
or
that.
something.
You've accomplished and you've gone through a lot of crazy things in your life, obviously, with everything you've told me tonight. What is the craziest, most outrageous thing that you have yet to achieve that you want to achieve in your life?
That I want to achieve my life. Okay, I would say, craziest thing. I don't think it's that crazy. Like, I would love to be able to have, you know, some sort of outlet or show or something to where I am able to do group healings and readings for people on a much larger scale than I
Okay.
already do.
So we have a question coming in for you from, hold on, April Lee. How do you improve your intuitive intelligence?
Okay, my number one thing to people is meditation. Do not underestimate the power of meditation, right? I meditate every single day of my life, multiple times a day usually.
Okay.
And when you can learn to quiet your mind and to get into that state of complete just stillness, oneness, and being, that's when the messages and everything starts to arrive. That's when you become one with that consciousness, that all knowing intelligence, right? That God consciousness, that all that is. And
Hmm.
that's how you establish that, right? Because that's where it is. It's in the stillness, it's in the quietness, because at that point, when your ego's not present, that is when your intuition speaks. And so the more you can learn to do that, the more you can do that, the more it becomes a natural state of being to where everything in life becomes meditation. And then it just naturally becomes a channel that flows.
Guys, if you have a question for Carla, we're going to be doing a Q&A section for you guys to ask some questions now. I'm also be taking some callers in, so if you do want to ask her a question actually live, you need to send an invite request, but you can drop your questions below here, and we will take some callers in the next few minutes. What do you hope to achieve in your professional life that you haven't done yet?
That I haven't done yet. I hope to, because I've had so many people say it like for years and years. I hope to, find somebody that is a very good ghostwriter that can help me to tell my story and all of the crazy twists and turns in between.
Have you thought about doing it into like a film aspect of it?
I've also been told that I should do that too. It just seems like a book might be an easier place to start, but you never know.
Whenever you're ready to produce that documentary, you have my number. Because no, I'm serious. Because I think it would be very, very interesting to understand everything that you've gone through and see it from yes, a book is great and you can get that, that reading aspect of it, but I think that people actually see from their own eyes, from a different perspective of not only what you've been through, but as you said, the overcoming of it and the growth. So like if you were to speak to your 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old younger self now, what advice would you give to that younger Carla?
I would just tell her that it's all going to work out in the end for the better. I wouldn't change a single thing that I've been through, good or bad. It's made me who I am today, and I am so grateful and blessed and happy for who I am and every experience that shaped it.
Hold on a second. Guys, again, if you have a question for Carla, please drop it below. If you want to jump on and ask her a question live and direct, send an invite request, and I will drop you into the conversation to ask her your question live. Let's see who's on here. I may also pick some random people on here to jump in and ask her a question, so let me see who is on here. We're just going to pick a random person here. If you want to jump in and ask Carla a question, you can accept, and then you can come in and ask her a question directly or ask myself a question live, and we will do our best to answer it. Hi. Who's this? Okay. Kathleen left. Guys, once again, if you have a question you want to ask Carla directly, I'm going to send an invite to somebody randomly as well. You can jump on and ask her a question live and direct. Just state your name and your city and ask your question away.
It's okay. Some people are shy.
People are very shy because you're an intimidating, beautiful woman.
They don't want to know anything.
Guys, here's your chance. You guys have been following her, and some of you probably stalking her on her social media. So here's your chance. If you want to ask her a question, drop it in the questions below, or you can jump on and ask her a question live. And who is this? Someone just sent a request here. Not sure if they're still on here. Nope. C. Scar TD says, "Can we get the outfit of the day?"
The outfit of the day. I mean, yeah, it's kind of dark up here because let me see if I can find the remote. I don't even know where the remote control is for my overhead light. I mean, I'll try to see it over here.
I see some leopard print. I see some sexy leopard. God damn, woman! Jesus
So you know
Christ,
how I
have
am.
mercy.
I'm always in dresses, right? Like this is just it's the way that I am. So I'm upstairs in my office
How would
now.
someone not put a ring on your finger is the question that I'm still trying to fucking figure out, man. Because literally to
People try.
wake up to that and look at that every single morning in those dresses, like it'd be heaven. Because literally, like you are what I say to me, like if I could define the way that a woman should dress and do it with so much class, because there's just so much as you see, like my thing is like there's so many women that legitimately don't know how to dress. And every time I see them, like you never miss. Like I've never seen you miss in an outfit.
Thank you.
Ever. Like ever. Hold on. Who is this?
Thank you.
Okay, hold